Let's go to our fourth speaker of the panel. Ganaele Langlois is also coming from Toronto. She's an assistant professor in communication studies at York University in Toronto, and also associate director of the already mentioned Infoscape Lab, or actually Infoscape Center for Study of Social Media. Ganaele has worked a lot on similar topics as our other speakers, including software studies, also critical theory, research methods, digital research methods, and I want to especially mention her book, Meaning in the Age of Social Media, that I really warmly recommend to everyone in the room. It's all yours.
Thanks, Jussi. I'm going to follow up on the becoming data point by, linking what it means to be a data point and how do we think about the relationship between data point and neoliberal subjectivity. To start with, when I was thinking originally about the idea, the concept of data point, for me, it's just immediately reminded me of Deleuze's control society and this discussion about the individual, that we all become part of databases, and therefore we all can be, kind of modulated, or parts of us can be taken, some data from us can be taken and reassembled, recombined in other database, and so on and so forth. The key point here, from thinking back to Deleuze, is that is the question of modulation, of course, and the inseparability of thinking between data flows and data points. And so, for me, I'm trying to think about how the flows of data is always, the context within which we can think of data points, and data points as being in the context of social media, this kind of ever-changing, evolving characteristics. Furthermore, becoming data points, I kind of immediately thought about the being pointed out, the interpellation, if you want, the being singled out. So about the relationship between what was talked about yesterday, between being part of a pattern and being identified as outside of a pattern, as an anomaly, and those two being very much in relationship and inseparable from each other. So how are we singled out? And my question became then, how are we singled out, not particularly as human beings, but as neoliberal subjects? So how do we become neoliberal subjects? Through the information networks, if you want. So to make the link between the information networks and social media and neoliberalism more generally, we can go back to the concept or the subject, the neoliberal subject, as that is being described as Homo economicus, which is the individual who has internalized economic rationality and capitalist rationality. But what is interesting about the subject, this neoliberal subject that recognizes itself primarily as an economic agent in a competitive marketplace, is also what does it do to other aspects of non-rational life, if you want, which is the psyche. Like what does it do in terms of consequences to the psyche? And that's one aspect that I'm particularly interested in, which is about what are the psychic consequences of becoming a neoliberal subject. And so then, even though we think about economic rationality, it is important, and even though, we have this idea of neoliberalism from its proponents saying there is no such thing as society, as Margaret Thatcher said, and so on and so forth, actually, neoliberalism very much needs the social, but a particular kind of social, and a particular kind of social bonding, and I'm going to say anti-social bonding as well. What I mean by that, and I think Carolin in some ways, when I saw all the Instagram hashtag made me think of that, is like, one aspect of, kind of being a neoliberal subject is that you always have to be happy in the first place. And you always have to be happy and positive and peppy and talk and all that, and show yourself as, a creative individual. So that's the part of kind of the immaterial labor, if you want, that we talked about yesterday, and also kind of, what could be part of the whole cognitive capitalism type of thing. So there's a lot of happiness that we need to produce in order to be the good neoliberal subjects, a happiness that is kind of also very formatted as selfies and so on and so forth, that show us, all in our pose about being happy, going on about our lives. But another thing that's interesting to think about is to think about the opposite of happiness, or the opposite, more kind of dark emotions and more dark psychic dynamics. And the one I'm particularly interested in is shame. And shaming as a very essential key concept, key platform, if you want, of the neoliberal subjectivity. And I'm particularly interested in that because this year, even though it's been going on for a long time, we've seen a recrudescence of question of cyberbullying, from, you know, kind of teenage cyberbullying and kids cyberbullying to flame wars, you know, and all that sort of thing, to what is going to be one of my side of interest, which is the revenge porn. And my main question is about how does shame become a market? How does, you know, how is shame transformed into something that can be valued and that does generate quite an enormous amount of money through social media platforms? My case studies are not on, you know, kind of the regular social media corporations. Rather, they're more going more to the margins here. There's 3 case studies I'm working on right now. One of them is a revenge porn website. It's called myex.com. It's pretty straightforward. The other is a kind of, I don't know quite how to categorize it, except it's a kind of gossipy truth-telling website, which is called the dirty.com, where people can just reveal everybody else's dirty secrets, which are usually related to the sexual behavior and sexually transmitted disease and so on and so forth. And the third website that I'm kind of looking at is quite different, because the first 2 are user-generated content, right? You know, and they're pretty much built as user-generated content platform and as kind of community websites. The third website is called globe24.com, and that is interesting. It actually is a website that kind of gathers, you know, all kind of public archives from the legal world. And so it came to my attention because it siphoned all the public archive related to family court cases in Canada, and then put them in there so that, and what happened is that now all those court cases are on Google, if you want, or can be, you know, kind of ranked on Google and so on and so forth. So what is interesting with that website too, with the platform, is that it's more of a database type of format, and it's kind of operating within your kind of idea of public information and transparency of information, but at the same time it reveals very personal details about family cases, mostly about divorces, the details of your divorces, but that can actually kind of quickly goes into, you know, question of abuse, domestic abuse, and so on and so forth, which are then, you know, kind of publicly leaked onto Google. So let me go a little bit about how to understand, you know, shame, and all those 3. What kind of joins all those 3 websites is they're pretty much shaming. They're very gendered. The victims are usually female. I would say pretty much at 90%. And also, they are worth quite a bit of money. So when I think, and I'm trying to find myex.com exactly at how much it's valued, and it really depends on the days and whether the website was closed or not, you know, and shut down. But at least myex.com, you know, kind of says that it's valued at $10 million. So it is, you know, kind of part of a kind of an economy of, you know, and I will talk about it more, an economy of attention. So how does it work, and how do those websites work in terms of producing those, using shame as a to produce those subjectivities? One thing is important to understand is that all these websites operate in a legal gray zone, is that the victims have absolutely, and I'm talking about the North American context, it would be very different in Europe, I think, from my understanding. But in the North American context, there's absolutely nothing you can do if somebody, an ex-boyfriend, decides to release, you know, pictures of videos of your, you know, sexual activities and so on and so forth. In the same way, on the dirty.com, you know, somebody can say lies about you. There's nothing, and you have no legal recourse for that. Okay. And on the other website, globe24.com, there's also, because the archives are public, there is no recourse for you to say, well, I would like to see that part of my life out of Google or out of the Google ranking system. So it's important to figure that one out, and because the law is very much in, you know, in the what the law does, it does produce agency, and in that case, for the victims, there is absolutely no agency. So how does it work? It's interesting to see that the first 2 websites, both are kind of like I would classify as revenge cyberbullying websites, are very much, you know, kind of acting in that kind of culture of visibility and the kind of culture of extreme attention-seeking behaviors. And in the sense that it is interesting because they act as the anti-Instagram, if you want. You know, when I look at the pictures that are released first on those two websites, the first picture you see, you know, is kind of a selfie that was leaked, you know, from the victim's cell phone. And then after that, you click into it and you get into kind of porn videos and so on and so forth. And the other, the dirty.com, exactly works the same way. What it does is like, you know, you publish a selfie of the person you're going to attack, and then you go on and destroy them, and you go on a rampage of destruction. What is interesting then is that shame works, you know, and shame is a really interesting kind of psychic or relational kind of, it's a form of relationship, it's filiant, that we think about shame as being the absolute social isolation. When we are shamed, we are outside of society, we've been completely rejected, and we internalize that rejection, right? So you can understand how shaming then would be very important if you have internalized the notion of competition. Right, a neoliberal competition, and that it would be very important then to enter into a kind of shaming behavior. And it is exactly what I see when I'm kind of like in the process of doing a discourse analysis of all the kind of like what is the dynamic between the person who uploads the videos and the commenters and lurkers who are, you know, looking on the website. And what you can see is that really intense competition for social attention. But what I mean by that is not only, you know, that the victim there becomes a kind of platform, if you want, or the data point, the victim as data point is not only, you know, revealing all their secrets, but also allowing for the creation of specific social bonds, if you want, or a specific community that is gathered around this notion of shaming the victim further, but also all incorporates in itself this competition. So, for instance, when I look at the revenge porn website, myex.com, what happens is that somebody will leak a video, for instance, and then immediately the comments will go on details about, you know, the physical qualities of the person who's being leaked, you know, how ugly, you know, and, you know, characteristics of their, you know, like going to intense, you know, discussion about whether that person is attractive or not, and so on and so forth. But what also you see is that there is a lot of shaming of the poster, of the person who uploads the video by saying, you know, how, you know, and one of the first way of shaming that person is to say, well, how could you, you know, have sex with this, you know, like, and, you know, goes into the objectification, further objectification, victimization of the women in question. But also there is the way in which the commenters act is saying and reminding the poster that they should, their attention should be captured, they should be more entertained. So there's always calls for saying, well, you only have pictures, where are your videos, upload the videos, you know, was it even you in the videos, it doesn't look like you in the videos, and so on and so forth, and it goes on like that. And so there's the real competition about, you know, I was saying that the shaming becomes, you know, kind of like the default social relation, if you want. And so, in many ways, when you think about it, there's a relationship between an attention economy that is built with, you know, kind of the with the people who are commenting on those videos and pictures, saying, you know, you should keep me entertained, and what is going on also in kinds of social sorting happening. And it's kind of like, and to go back to Carolin's work, it's kind of a reverse cloud, if you want, you know. So whereas cloud is very much about, you know, evaluating, you know, and creating value, you know, like looking at your value. In some ways, as a data point and part of data flows, you know, those websites are creating a system of devaluation, right? You know, and they're all about taking points out, if you want. What is interesting is the second website I'm looking at, it's thedirty.com, because it is an interesting phenomenon that's mostly targeted at young people who are into the party scene, if you want. And it's kind of like, you know, there's rich kids of Instagram, you know, and then there's this website which is kind of more the Jersey Shore version, if you want. Because it's really about those kids who are partying a lot and trying to get seen and going onto the party circuit, and they know each other very well, and therefore they kind of attack each other and kind of, you know, attack especially young women by saying, well, this woman is like, you know, actually, you know, has this and these defects and so many sexually transmitted diseases and so on and so forth. And it's all about this devaluation and revaluation of saying, you know, like, this person has too much social value, let's take it down, right? And therefore, it kind of established that kind of, you know, this kind of like this internalization of the metrics in some ways, of the cloud metrics, if you want, how much I am worth, you know. and how do I, enter in competition to devalue other person and revalue myself in that sense. So this is the kind of internal competition that is going on among all the users of the websites. What is interesting to look at as well is how the informational and commercial networks of these websites themselves, of these platforms, kind of really further solidify this particular relationality. And so for the revenge porn website, obviously it's linked to the porn economy. So the idea being, from their kind of business point of view, is that this, all those kind of grainy pictures and videos, that were, kind of leaked from cell phones and all that, that serves, they become data point and attention focus. But then what that does also is that it supposedly titillates, the viewer enough so that then it will go onto porn websites. And those porn websites are all around the web page. And also as, pop-ups, like one of those things that pops up on your computers, and then you close one and the other 10 other opens, and so on and so forth. So there's this kind of like real porn economy that's being revisited here. What is interesting is that it poses really a question about these videos and the question of and we talked about that yesterday, about free labor or this kind of laboring, of those women becoming unwitting porn stars, if you want, but also becoming part of a data flow, because what happens too is that the leaked images and the leaked videos, they're also going to be taken by other websites, right? So they're going to become ways of capturing attention by other platforms and porn platforms and so on and so forth, because they're free, right? It's free material, so therefore you take that, you can use it to build a kind of amount of content, turn it into a big database of pornographic material, and then that kind of drags more attention and so on. So that's how the kind of that operates in the porn economy. In the kind of in this other website, the dirty.com, the way it works is a bit different. Is that it is about, as I've said before, this phenomenon of evaluation, devaluation, revaluation of social worth. And what it does is that it allows the owner of the website to, the owner of the platform to then push forward all kinds of youth-related, party-related activities. So what that guy does, the owner of the website, who's kind of presenting himself as a social crusader of sort, as somebody who kind of allows for the cleaning out of the social scene, organizes, kind of expensive parties in nightclubs and so on and so forth. And so that, he pushes those parties, so then people come to those parties and kind of join that kind of community that is really about making oneself visible, making oneself, part of this attention Kardashian, if you want, Kim Kardashian-like economy, where if you're seen, then you become worth something. Okay, so it's part of that economy of partying. And the last website I'm looking at, the Globe 24 website, is more about their commercial model is a bit more opaque in that they used to say, if you want your information to be anonymized on this platform, you will have to send a request and pay 19 euros via PayPal. So it was pretty much a blackmail, you want your information clean, you have to, pay up, right? It's changed a little bit right now because I think they're, kind of they came under attack for that, so they're not mentioning a fee at this point directly on their website, but I haven't went through the whole process of asking for some information to be removed yet, so I don't know what the actual procedure is like. But how much time do you have, Jussi? A couple of minutes. So I'm just going to follow up with, finish up with this notion of the informational structure of the web, and especially of Google as a solidifier of all this behavior, in the sense that what is important and where you find the common point of all three platforms is Google. Right, even though they might be at the margins, once once your photos are leaked, at some point it's going to be in your Google search results. And one of the experiments I'm doing right now is following some of the names of the women who have been leaked and seeing, Googling their first seeing the Google search result to see how long it takes for them for those pictures to kind of crawl up to the top. And I think the fastest I've seen is 2 days, right, for those pictures to be at the top. So once that is there, anybody who views or does a Google search and then clicks on that link is going to reinforce reinforce that ranking. And so what happens there is that a really kind of solidification of the pictures and the kind of like the complete, everlasting shaming of this particular person. But what is interesting as well is that close with those part of the search results too, very quickly are about search engine optimization. And there goes, what is your agency? What is your agency as a victim? And your agencies only exist in economic informational term. That is, you have to pony up money in order to clean up your Google search results, right? And so the companies, the search engine optimization companies, promises to clean, if you want, your search result and your information in order to make it more, to kind of bury the pictures further down and further down. Other ways in which people, and even that legal platform that I'm referring to, what they recommend, and they're kind of very straightforward in saying, well, what you should do then is you should have a more active online presence, i.e. become much more of a productive, happy social media presence. You should have your LinkedIn account, you should have Facebook, your Twitter, and all that. You should be on all the social media platforms, because then those are going to be pushed at the top of your Google search results. Right. So I'm just going to leave that here. It's pretty much research in progress, and there's a lot of more research I need to do about that, but it's interesting and I'm trying to come up with the vocabulary about how to think about shaming and shaming behavior when it becomes an informational logic, right? And I welcome any feedback for this. Thank you.
Great. That was really good. Thank you very much.